Adrian Cross had learned, over many years and several regrettable grant presentations, that walking into a room full of important people was a lot like walking into a carnivorous greenhouse. Everything looked calm, but one wrong movement and something would try to digest you. The royal court of Lethera was worse. It was too clean, too symmetrical, too deliberately quiet. The floor responded to footsteps with a faint, polite glow, as if even the architecture was judging him. Adrian adjusted his grip on the slim containment case he carried, acutely aware that his palms were damp enough to qualify as a minor irrigation system. He reminded himself for the seventh time that he was not here to offend anyone. He was a botanist. Plants were his language. Plants did not have thrones. "Walk forward," he muttered under his breath. "Hand over the thing. Say thank you. Walk backward. Do not trip. Do not faint. Definitely do not faint." The case hummed softly, regulating humidity and light for its single occupant. Inside it, something alive pulsed faintly, as if aware that it was about to be introduced to an audience that had never knelt in soil or coaxed life from genetic ruin. Adrian felt absurdly proud of it, the way one might feel proud of a child on the first day of school, if that school happened to be a galactic monarchy. When his name was announced, the sound echoed far longer than it should have. Adrian stepped forward and immediately realized that everyone was looking at him with the same expression people reserve for unexploded devices. Queen Nyra sat upon the elevated dais, posture immaculate, expression unreadable. Adrian had prepared for this moment by watching archived council recordings, pausing them to practice neutral eye contact and respectful nodding. None of that helped now. The presence of the court was heavy, like gravity had been turned up a notch. He stopped at the indicated mark and bowed. Not too deep, not too shallow. His knee protested quietly. That was new. He chose to ignore it. "Your Majesty," he began, then stopped because his voice had come out slightly higher than expected. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Your Majesty, thank you for granting me this audience, and for the continued funding of the Xenofloral Revival Project, which I promise is less dangerous than it sounds." A few heads tilted. Humor was a gamble. Adrian committed anyway. "I'm not here to present a report," he continued, lifting the case. "I thought I'd offer something simpler." He tapped the release panel, and the case unfolded like a mechanical flower of its own, petals of transparent alloy retracting with careful precision. The light within shifted, softening. The blossom inside unfurled in response, its structure delicate but assured, colors moving subtly as if remembering how to exist. The court inhaled as one organism. Adrian didn't look at them. He looked at the queen. "I cultivated it from fragmented seed data recovered from a derelict archive world," he said, finding his rhythm now, comforted by familiar ground. "It blooms briefly. It won't survive transport again. I wanted you to see it alive." He hesitated, then added, "As thanks." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Queen Nyra stood. The motion alone sent a ripple through the court. Adrian's brain registered movement, protocol alarms, the sudden awareness that he might have done something catastrophically wrong. He considered apologizing preemptively, but she was already descending the steps. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could see her eyes focused not on him, but on the flower. Something in her expression shifted, subtle, but unmistakable. Not surprise, recognition. Adrian smiled, relieved. "It's non-toxic," he said quickly. "Mostly, I wouldn't recommend eating it. I made that mistake once." That was when she embraced him. It happened fast. Arms around his shoulders, firm and warm, and undeniably real. Adrian's mind shut down every non-essential process. His containment case tilted dangerously. Somewhere behind him, someone gasped. Possibly several someones. Before he could recalibrate, she pulled back just enough to kiss his cheek. The sound of it, soft, unguarded, echoed louder than the chamber ever had. Adrian stood there stunned, thoughts scrambling like panicked insects. He was aware of several things simultaneously. The faint scent of the blossom, the warmth lingering where her lips had touched, and the absolute weaponized silence of the court. He began, then stopped, because every possible continuation felt wrong. Queen Nyra smiled. It was not a diplomatic smile. It was not a royal one. It was the kind of smile people wore when they forgot, briefly, that the universe was watching. "Thank you, Adrian Cross," she said, her voice steady now, though something bright lingered beneath it. "You honor me." Adrian nodded once, very carefully. "You're welcome," he replied, because his brain had decided that basic politeness was the safest available option. Behind him, a counselor dropped something. The sound was loud, inappropriate, perfect. Adrian wondered, distantly, whether flowers could still photosynthesize under political pressure, and whether it was too late to pretend he had meant something else entirely. Adrian learned three important things in the span of the next 90 seconds. First, silence could be weaponized. Second, being escorted by palace guards did not automatically mean execution, but it did feel uncomfortably similar. Third, no one ever trained scientists for what to do after accidentally triggering a romantic protocol in an alien monarchy. He was guided, politely but firmly, through a side corridor whose walls adjusted their color in response to emotional intensity. Adrian noticed this only because they were currently cycling through what looked like diplomatic mauve. That seemed promising, or ominous, possibly both. "Am I in trouble?" he asked the nearest guard, who had the expression of someone professionally committed to not answering that question. "You are safe," the guard replied. "That's not the same as no," Adrian muttered. They deposited him in a reception chamber furnished with seating that appeared to grow out of the floor when needed. A table emerged, offering a steaming cup of something fragrant. Adrian eyed it suspiciously. "Is this tea?" he asked the empty room. The cup pulsed faintly. He decided that was a yes. Minutes passed. Adrian replayed the moment in the court again and again, his mind obsessing over details with the enthusiasm of a malfunctioning archive system. The hug, the kiss, the sound the court made afterward, a collective intake of breath that suggested history had just tripped over a chair. He pressed two fingers to his cheek. It still felt warm. That was probably psychosomatic, or diplomatic fallout. The door shifted open. Queen Nyra entered without ceremony, her long ears angled back in what Adrian had learned, purely from frantic post-event research on his wrist console, was a sign of restraint. "Ah," he said, standing too quickly. "Hello again." She studied him for a long moment. Adrian resisted the urge to explain everything at once, including his childhood, his career choices, and the time he accidentally crossbred a vine that screamed when watered. "You are unsettled," she observed. "Yes," Adrian replied. "That's my default state, but today it's earned." Her lips curved despite herself. She gestured for him to sit. He obeyed with the relief of someone grateful for instructions. "You did not know," she said. "No," he said immediately. "I absolutely did not know. If I had known, I would have brought a thank you note, or a fruit basket, or nothing. Probably nothing." She exhaled slowly. "Among my people, to cultivate a living bloom by one's own care and present it directly is an intimate declaration." Adrian winced. "On my world, it usually means I panicked and needed something to hold." That earned a soft, startled sound from her, a laugh, quickly restrained. Her ears twitched before settling again. "The court will interpret my response as acknowledgement," she said. "Of romance," Adrian said faintly. "Of intent." He stared into his tea. "I swear my intent was gratitude and mild terror." Silence settled, less sharp this time. "And yet," Nyra continued, "you chose that blossom. You chose to bring something fleeting, alive." Adrian frowned. "I didn't want to hand you a report. You get plenty of those." Her gaze softened. "You did not choose nothing." That was the problem. Adrian had spent his life believing intent was everything. Now he was learning that meaning sometimes arrived uninvited. "I don't want to cause harm," he said quietly. "I know," she replied. A communicator chimed. Nyra listened briefly, then sighed. "The council is already debating whether you are to be protected, praised, or exiled." "Ah," Adrian said, "the Holy Trinity." She smiled again, this time openly. "You may return to your quarters, for now." "For now," he echoed. As he stood to leave, he hesitated. For what it's worth, he said, the flower responded unusually well to your presence. Her ears lifted, just slightly. So did I, she said. Adrian left the chamber, wondering whether botany had just become the most dangerous science in the galaxy. Adrian did not sleep. This was not unusual. What was unusual was that his insomnia now had a very specific cause, and that cause had kissed him in front of an interstellar government. He lay on the narrow bed in his palace-assigned quarters, staring at the ceiling as it slowly shifted through simulated constellations meant to induce calm. Whoever had programmed it had never met a human mind in active panic. The stars drifted. Adrian counted them. Then he started naming them after plants. That helped for exactly 12 seconds. His wrist console chimed for the fourth time with an incoming message he refused to open. It was from the Institute. Then another from a colleague who clearly thought this was hilarious. A third from someone asking whether flowers now counted as diplomatic weapons. Adrian rolled onto his side and pressed his face into the pillow. I just wanted to say thank you, he muttered. That's it. That was the plan. The door chimed. He froze. The door chimed again, politely insistent, like someone knocking on a coffin to check if the occupant was truly dead. Adrian sat up, ran a hand through his hair, and activated the door with a gesture that was meant to look calm and probably looked like surrender. Queen Nyra stood outside. She was not wearing her crown. That fact alone made Adrian's brain short-circuit. I'm not dreaming, he said immediately. No, she replied. If you were, this would be stranger. That was not comforting. She stepped inside and the door sealed behind her with a soft hiss that sounded far too final. Adrian gestured vaguely at the room. I don't have flowers, Martin, he said. On purpose. I noticed, she said. Her ears angled forward, curious rather than tense. May I sit? Please, he said, then corrected himself. I mean, yes, obviously. Sit. Anywhere. The furniture listens. She did sit, perching at the edge of the chair like someone unused to sitting without an audience. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was different from the court silence. Less sharp, more human, despite the ears. The council believes you are either very brave, Nyra said, or very foolish. Adrian nodded. Those are not mutually exclusive. They are debating whether your gesture was subconscious. Oh, it was conscious, Adrian said. I just didn't know what it meant, which feels worse somehow. Her mouth twitched. Ignorance with sincerity is still sincerity. He sighed. On Earth, we have entire fields of study dedicated to misunderstanding intent. She studied him closely now, not like a ruler evaluating a subject, but like a person trying to solve a puzzle without all the pieces. You are not trying to gain advantages, she said. No, Adrian replied. If I were, I would have read the cultural handbook instead of using it to prop up a broken shelf. That earned him a laugh, real this time, unguarded. It seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised him. Her ears flicked upward, then stilled, as if embarrassed by their own enthusiasm. I have spent my life ensuring that every gesture is controlled, she said, measured, interpreted before it is made. And how's that working out? Adrian asked gently. She considered him, then the room, then let out a slow breath. Exhaustingly. Something eased between them. I didn't come to demand anything, she said, nor to apologize. That's good, Adrian said. I'm terrible at receiving apologies. I never know where to put my hands. A pause, then she smiled again. I came because the court is turning this into something it does not yet deserve to be, Nyra said. And because I wanted to see if the man who cultivates extinct flowers panics in private as much as he does in public. Adrian thought about lying. He decided against it. Oh, much more, he said. In public, I'm at least wearing shoes. Her gaze softened. Then let us agree on something. Please, he said. I'm very good at agreeing. We will not define this, she said. Not yet. Adrian nodded slowly. Undefined is manageable. I work with unknown variables all the time. She stood. Good. As she reached the door, she paused. For what it is worth, she said without turning, the blossom has not closed. Adrian blinked. That's impossible. Its cycle has extended, she finished. It responds to presence. The door opened. And Adrian, she added. Yes? Next time you wish to thank me, she said, use words. She left him alone with a ceiling full of stars and the uncomfortable realization that some things, once grown, refused to return to seed. By the following morning, the palace had developed opinions. Adrian knew this because his wrist console refused to stop vibrating with messages that began with polite formalities and ended with thinly veiled panic. Scientists from the institute wanted clarification. Administrators wanted statements. One intern asked whether flowers could be classified as controlled substances now. Adrian ignored all of it and focused on the more immediate crisis. Breakfast. The food synthesizer in his quarters had learned his preferences overnight and was now aggressively offering nutrient-balanced options that tasted like regret. He selected something labeled grain adjacent and sat down, only to discover that the table surface was displaying a live council session. "Oh no," he whispered. "I didn't consent to this." The Queen's advisors were arguing in perfect, measured tones, which somehow made it worse. Words like precedent, symbolic escalation, and interspecies perception drift floated across the table. Adrian chewed mechanically and wondered if anyone would notice if he relocated to an uncharted moon. A chime interrupted the debate. A message flashed across his console. Summons Greenhouse Sector 9, non-negotiable. Adrian stared at it. "That's new," he said to the empty room. "Usually they negotiate first." Sector 9 was his domain, at least temporarily. The palace had allocated it to house his specimens, a sprawling biodome with adaptive climate fields and soil imported from 3 worlds that had never agreed on anything except the existence of dirt. Adrian felt calmer the moment he stepped inside. The air smelled alive. The plants didn't care about court politics. They responded to light, water, and attention, reasonable expectations. Queen Nyra was already there. She stood among the growth fields without attendants. Sleeves rolled slightly, long ears angled in alert curiosity as she examined a vine that tried very hard to climb her arm. "It's friendly," Adrian said automatically. "Mostly." She glanced at him. "Mostly is not reassuring." "It only constricts if it thinks you're a threat," he said. "Or delicious." Her brow lifted. "And how does it decide that?" Adrian shrugged. "Chemistry. Instinct. Poor judgment." She smiled faintly and gently redirected the vine back to its support frame. "You summoned me here," she said. "I was summoned," Adrian corrected, "which is different and significantly more stressful." "Ah," she said. "Then we are both here against our will." "That's the foundation of most successful collaboration," he said. They walked between rows of growth chambers, silence settling comfortably this time. Adrian adjusted light levels as they passed, more out of habit than necessity. "The council believes this space is neutral ground," Nyra said. "They are less inclined to argue among chlorophyll." "Plants are very persuasive," Adrian said. "They've convinced entire civilizations to stop and stare." She stopped near the blossom, the one he had given her. It was still open, petals luminous, refusing the closure its biology demanded. "They want to know what you intend," Nyra said quietly. Adrian laughed once, short and incredulous. "Intent again. I barely know what I'm having for lunch." Her ears shifted back slightly. "This is not humorous to them." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm joking." She turned to face him. "Do you regret the gesture?" He thought about the warmth of her embrace, about the way the court had frozen, about the way something inside him had settled unexpectedly when she laughed in his quarters. "No," he said. "I regret being uninformed, not the act." Nyra nodded slowly. "That answer will complicate matters." "I seem to be very good at that," Adrian said. A panel at the edge of the dome activated, projecting a list of proposals from the council. Each one was worse than the last. Formal inquiry, cultural mediation, temporary separation, permanent reassignment. "Exile," Adrian read. "That feels extreme." "They are being cautious," Nyra said. "From what? A plant?" "From change," she replied. Adrian sighed. "I can leave," he said, "if that makes this easier." Her ears flicked sharply. "Do not offer sacrifices you do not wish to make." "I wish to make very few sacrifices," he admitted. Mostly I wish to grow things and not destabilize governments. Nyra studied him, then dismissed the projection with a gesture. I will address the council, she said, but I will not erase what happened. That's bold, Adrian said. I am tired of restraint, she replied, and you, Adrian Cross, have disrupted my equilibrium with soil and patience. Those are my core competencies. She stepped closer to the blossom, extending a finger toward it without touching. It responds to you, she said. It responds to attention, Adrian replied. Same as most living things. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something unspoken passed between them. An understanding neither had intended to cultivate. Stay, she said simply. Adrian swallowed. I don't know what staying means. Neither do I, Nyra said. That makes it honest. He nodded, a slow, careful motion. Then I'll stay. Somewhere in the palace, an advisor would faint. In the greenhouse, the blossom pulsed brighter, as if approving the decision. Adrian wondered if this was how ecosystems began. Quietly, unexpectedly, with two elements choosing proximity over certainty. The palace reacted to Adrian's decision the way complex systems always did when a variable refused to resolve, with cascading side effects. By midday, he had been invited to 3 committees, uninvited from one, and formally observed by a pair of cultural liaisons who insisted they were invisible while standing directly in his line of sight. Adrian waved at them once. They pretended not to notice. It was exhausting for everyone. He retreated to the greenhouse under the pretense of recalibrating growth cycles, which was not entirely untrue. Plants, unfortunately, had also begun reacting. Several specimens showed accelerated responses whenever Queen Nyra was within proximity. Adrian tried not to read into that. He failed immediately. He was knee-deep in soil. Literally, one of the beds had aggressive suction properties, when his console chimed again. This time, the message header read, Public Perception Briefing. No, Adrian said firmly to the dirt. Absolutely not. The dirt did not argue, which made it the most reasonable participant in the situation so far. Later that day, Nyra joined him again, this time flanked by an aide who looked like they had not slept since the incident in the court. You are trending, the aide said flatly. Adrian blinked. I'm a botanist. Your name is now a symbol, the aide replied, and a debate. Nyra dismissed them with a gesture. The aide left, clearly torn between relief and terror. I apologize, Nyra said. My people are expressive. I once watched a university collapse over a disputed fungus, Adrian said. I understand. They walked together through the greenhouse, careful not to touch. That part felt intentional now, a shared restraint rather than distance. The council wants to know if you intend to formalize anything, Nyra said. Adrian groaned softly. Formalize what? Mutual confusion? An acknowledgement, she said. A denial. Something definable. He stopped walking. What do you want? She hesitated. That alone felt monumental. I want room, she said finally, to discover whether my reaction was cultural reflex or personal truth. Adrian nodded. That seems reasonable. Her mouth curved slightly. They will hate that. Excellent, he said. We're aligned. They shared a quiet moment before a plant behind them emitted a loud, rhythmic clicking sound. Nyra startled. What is that? Adrian winced. That's a pollinator beacon. It activates when it senses unresolved tension. She stared at the plant. You are joking. I wish I were. She laughed despite herself, the sound echoing softly against the dome. Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. That evening, the palace broadcast a carefully worded announcement about ongoing cultural exchange. Adrian watched it from his quarters, seated on the bed, eating something that might once have been bread. The message ended. Silence followed. Then his console chimed again. A private channel. Nyra. Are you awake? Adrian. Define awake. Nyra. I cannot sleep. Adrian. That makes 2 of us. Mine's from anxiety. What's yours? A pause. Nyra. Curiosity. He smiled before he could stop himself. She arrived without guards this time. No crown. No ceremony. Just Nyra, standing awkwardly in his doorway, like someone unsure whether they were allowed to exist casually. I brought nothing, she said. Good, Adrian replied. I'm out of vases. They sat on opposite sides of the room at first. Conversation wandered. Her childhood education, his disastrous first off-world assignment, the strange comfort of shared ignorance. At court, she said quietly, every word is weighed before it is spoken. I once insulted an ambassador by complimenting their hat, Adrian said. Turns out it was ceremonial mourning attire. She shook her head, amused. With you, I do not feel watched. That's because I'm terrible at watching, he said. I get distracted. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was anticipatory. I am afraid, Nyra admitted. Me too, Adrian said immediately. But I'm afraid of very small things, like expectations. She met his gaze. And I am afraid of choosing something for myself. They sat there, fear acknowledged, not resolved. Outside, the palace hummed, systems adjusting, narratives forming. Inside, two people remained undefined, and for the first time, neither felt compelled to fix that. Adrian thought distantly that if this was how new species of relationships evolved, slowly, awkwardly, with humor and hesitation, then perhaps the galaxy had been doing it wrong all along. By the sixth day after the flower, the palace had stopped pretending this was temporary. Adrian noticed because the guards no longer pretended not to know his name. One of them even asked whether the vine in Sector 9 could be trained to climb walls without consuming them. Adrian said yes, but only if it liked the wall. The guard nodded as if that answered everything. Nyra began appearing in places she was never meant to be. Not officially, not announced. She showed up in maintenance corridors, observation decks, once even in a service lift that stalled halfway between levels and forced them into 10 minutes of shared silence and one extremely philosophical conversation about buttons. I pressed the wrong one, Adrian said. There are no wrong ones, Nyra replied, then frowned. That sounded wiser in my head. The council predictably escalated. A formal inquiry was scheduled. Not a trial, everyone was careful to say that, but something adjacent enough to make Adrian's stomach perform complicated maneuvers. He sat across from Nyra in a quiet chamber while aides argued about seating distance and eye contact angles. Apparently, Adrian whispered, there's a recommended number of centimeters for neutrality. Nyra leaned slightly closer. We are exceeding it. Recklessly, he agreed. When the inquiry began, it was less hostile than expected and more absurd. Cultural analysts projected diagrams. Emotional statisticians argued over ear angles. Someone presented a graph showing the correlation between Adrian's proximity and increased bloom longevity. That one's circumstantial, Adrian muttered. Nyra's ear twitched. It is not. The questions came anyway. Intent, meaning, consequence. Adrian answered honestly, which confused them the most. I didn't plan this, he said, but I'm not pretending it didn't matter. Nyra spoke after him. Her voice was steady, but there was something new beneath it, a firmness that did not ask permission. I will not punish curiosity, she said, nor will I reduce a living interaction to a violation. Silence followed, not the weaponized kind, the thoughtful kind. The inquiry ended without resolution, which everyone agreed was alarming. That evening, Nyra suggested they leave the palace. Leave? Adrian echoed. Like, exit? There is a station beyond the upper ring, she said. Old, quiet, no one watches there. Adrian considered it. Is this how abdications start? She smiled. Only briefly. They traveled without entourage, using a small transit craft that recognized Nyra's biometric signature and immediately panicked. Systems recalibrated. Lights dimmed respectfully. Even the ship knows who you are, Adrian said. It does not know who I wish to be, she replied. The station was dimmer than the palace, older, its systems humming with the tired patience of something that had outlived its purpose. They walked along a viewport overlooking the curve of the planet, the stars steady and indifferent. I never come here, Nyra said. That seems criminal, Adrian replied. It has excellent silence. They stood there for a while. No politics, no flowers, just space. Do you ever regret choosing this life? Adrian asked. She did not answer immediately. I regret not choosing it sooner. He nodded. I regret choosing mine too late. She turned to him then. Adrian, if this were to end tomorrow, would you regret staying? He smiled faintly. I regret very few things I grow. Her ears lifted, just slightly. They returned before anyone noticed they were gone. The palace resumed its hum. The council prepared statements that would never be used. That night, as Adrian lay awake again, because some habits refused extinction, his console chimed once more. Nyra, tomorrow the council will demand clarity. Adrian, that sounds ominous. Nyra, I am prepared to give them some. A pause. Adrian, should I be afraid? Nyra, only if you prefer certainty. He set the console aside and stared at the ceiling stars, which had finally learned to stay still. Whatever came next would not be simple. It would not be clean. It would not fit neatly into protocol or taxonomy. But it would be chosen. And for the first time, that felt like enough. The council chamber felt different this time. Adrian noticed it immediately, which was unsettling because he had been trying very hard not to notice anything at all. He sat where he had been told to sit, hands folded, spine straight, heart doing unscheduled experiments. Around him, the advisors gathered with the careful patience of people who believed history might misbehave again if they blinked. Queen Nyra entered last. No crown, no announcement, just her. That alone was enough to derail half the prepared statements. Adrian did not look at her right away. He had learned over the past days that some moments needed to arrive on their own. When he finally did, she met his eyes without hesitation, her long ears held steady, not restrained, not reactive, certain. The counselor who spoke first cleared their throat in a way that suggested rehearsal. We require resolution, they said. Clarity. The events following the presentation of the botanical specimen have created instability. Adrian opened his mouth, then closed it. Nyra raised a hand. I will speak, she said. Silence followed. It listened. What occurred was not a breach, Nyra continued, nor a manipulation. It was an interaction unshielded by protocol. A ripple passed through the chamber. I will not deny its significance, she said, nor will I exaggerate it to satisfy fear. Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. He had spent his life assuming clarity meant narrowing things down. Now he realized it could mean opening them up. This court has governed through caution for centuries, Nyra said, and caution has kept us stable. It has also kept us isolated. Someone objected softly. Nyra did not look at them. The human botanist did not seek influence, she said. He sought expression. I responded as myself, not as an office. Adrian swallowed. Therefore, Nyra said, there will be no exile, no formal bond, no retraction. The room stilled. There will be acknowledgement, she added, of choice. The counselors exchanged glances. No one liked undefined outcomes. They were contagious. And what of your association? One asked carefully. Nyra turned to Adrian. For that, she said, I will let him answer. Every eye found him. Adrian inhaled deeply, the way he did before addressing plants that might dissolve him. I came here to grow things, he said. I still intend to. A few counselors blinked. I don't know what this is supposed to become, he continued, but I know what it isn't. It isn't a mistake, and it isn't a threat. A pause. Then, because panic had taught him honesty, he added, it's also the least efficient way I've ever destabilized a system, and I once rerouted an ecosystem through a broken pump. A few startled sounds emerged. One might have been a laugh. I'm staying, Adrian said. As a botanist, as a person, not as a symbol. Nyra inclined her head. The council deliberated, quietly, rapidly. When they spoke again, it was with reluctant acceptance. The court recognizes the Queen's authority, they said, and the uniqueness of this situation. Adrian resisted the urge to cheer. Afterward, the palace did not collapse. No wars were declared. No traditions spontaneously combusted. What did happen was subtler and somehow more disruptive. People relaxed, not all at once, but enough. Adrian returned to the greenhouse full-time, officially expanded into a joint research initiative. Students arrived, scholars followed. Someone asked him to give a lecture titled Emotional Resonance in Non-Sentient Flora, which he immediately renamed Why This Plant Likes You. Nyra visited often, sometimes formally, sometimes not. Sometimes they talked about governance and culture. Sometimes they argued about soil composition. Once they spent an hour watching a seed pod open and close in response to sound. "Does it always do that?" Nyra asked. "No," Adrian said. "Only when it feels listened to." She smiled. They did not rush. The court waited for escalation that never came. No declarations. No scandalous repeat performances. What grew instead was quieter. A shared rhythm. A trust cultivated without witnesses. Adrian noticed the change in himself gradually. He stopped apologizing before speaking. He stopped assuming his presence was accidental. He learned that offering something meaningful did not require certainty, only care. One evening, long after the excitement had cooled into memory, they stood together in the greenhouse as the original blossom finally closed, its cycle complete. Nyra touched the containment field gently. It lasted longer than expected. "So did I," Adrian said. She turned to him. "You no longer seem afraid." "I am," he admitted. "Just not of this." She leaned in, close enough that the space between them felt intentional rather than charged. "Then," Nyra said softly, "thank you for the flowers." Adrian smiled. "Next time," he said, "I'll explain first." She laughed, and the sound carried through the greenhouse, setting half the plants humming in quiet response. Somewhere systems adjusted, cultures shifted, nothing broke. And in a palace once ruled entirely by restraint, something new had taken root. Not loud, not dramatic, but alive, and growing exactly where it had chosen to be.